Okay, I guess I'm live. Hi. I'm here to talk about the latest thing that I just found out about, and maybe I'm just slow. We've been very distracted with so much going on in the world, but the price of eggs has gone up. And I live in a rural area. Well, it used to be rural and it's getting to be more cosmopolitan now. But we still have farms where we know where to go to get certain foods. So one of the places that we go to, it's an egg farm that actually delivers to a well-known food place, a well-known natural food store. Hint, hint. So we know where to go. And so it's less expensive to go straight to the farm rather than buying at that store. So we get flats of eggs. I think it's about 3 dozen in a flat. And they went up to $9, which is a lot of money, especially when you grew up when it didn't cost that much. So I was just wondering, why are the eggs so expensive? It never hit me that there was something going on with bird flu. And the understanding that I have is that the bird flu is being brought in by birds who are migrating from one country to the other. And then they land in the chicken yard. So if you have free range chickens, which is supposed to be the most ideal type of chicken, then it's a possibility that those chickens in the fenced in area where they're running around will walk into some poop from the birds who are already sick, and then it just goes through the whole of chickens so fast. Possibility of eggs even higher, and not only that, chickens are cold, they're being killed to cut back the possibility of the disease being spread further. Is causing the price to go up, and it should cause us to be concerned about the supply. Now, there are other countries that are rationing food right now. We don't know if it's going to get that bad here in the United States, but it's not unheard of. We have had rationing of food before, and we've had rationing of gas. I was fortunate. I wasn't born during the time when they were rationing food, but also I was a witness to the rationing of gasoline. So both of these are possible with all the things going on in the world. I'm not going to talk about those things. Possibly you know about what's going on. What I would like to focus on here is what you can do to be prepared so that you don't have to be worried about it. Now, my mother and father grew up during the Great Depression. And I asked my mom when I found out about it, oh, the people were jumping out the windows and during the Great Depression. And she said, we didn't notice the difference. We grew our own food. We had our own cow for milk. And, we had chickens running around. If we wanted chickens, we just grabbed them and, went through the process. I'm not going to go into the details on how that worked. So as a little kid, I was reading the Bible from the beginning cover to the end. And I read it more than once. And, I was caught up on the begots. Not only that, but also about the families passing on the skill sets to the next generation. Now, I am a DEA, which is a descendants of enslaved Africans here in the United States. I have a really long acronym for the whole process, but for right now, it's DEA, and it's not the Drug Enforcement Agency. It's I am a descendant of enslaved Africans. Now, although, as you can look at me and tell, we have mixed with several other groups here in the United States, we are identified by the government as Black or colored people. And our experience here in this country is a little bit different from other immigrants. Well, first of all, we were forced to come here, being that we were captured and we were prisoners of war and brought here and forced to work in the fields. My father was ashamed that his grandfather was a slave, but he did know his grandfather. The only way I found out about that was that I talked to some of his friends. I would ride out to the country on every Saturday morning for a period of time, trying to get the history, not knowing about that. And I came all the way back home. I was so excited. Dad, Mr. Cruz said that your granddaddy was a slave. And he got so mad. His granddaddy was a slave too. So there's a lot of embarrassment about what happened when our ancestors were enslaved. and it has caused problems where a lot of information has not been passed down to the next generation. My mother, her mother was a person that knew how to deal with uh, herbs and finding things in the forest and that type of thing. And my grandfather, my mom's father, his mother was a major healer. And just about everybody in the family is named after her, except for me. I didn't get any of those names, but there are a lot of cousins that have her name. That's a whole different story. But those gifts and talents were not passed down to the next generation because so many people wanted to forget the experience that they had uh, during slavery and after slavery, going through that whole process. A lot of you are familiar with the George Floyd. It was even worse things that happened on a repeated basis that were never rectified. My aunt moved to New York, and she told me if I moved to the country, she would refuse to come to see me again. So this is how hard it has been. And so a lot of the things have not been passed down through the generations. So when I was reading the Bible as a little girl, I found out about that. And I asked my parents, I said, well, I knew that they had grown up in the country and I wanted to find out how to learn, I wanted to learn how to garden. And we didn't own our own land, but we had a huge piece of property in the back of our house. But I decided I wanted to go closer to where my parents grew up. And so we went out, and at that time, we didn't own the house that we were living into. So that would mean we would have to get permission if, anyway, long story short, we went out to the country, and we were granted permission by one of their friends, no charge, y'all knock yourselves out. And that's how I learned how to garden. Now, I garden based upon what I like to eat. So I liked corn, butter beans, string beans, sweet potatoes. I may even have had some squash because I remember my mom making a big deal about crook neck and straight neck squash at the time. So anyway, I didn't like okra at the time because I didn't like the texture. It's kind of gooey. But now that I know the healing properties of okra, that's a whole different story. Now, I love okra now as a result of the knowledge about what it can do to heal the body. So now I have okra incorporated into my gardens. All right, so this is how I learned how to garden. And what I would like to say now is that I have friends who do gardening, but they do flower gardening. But we all do one thing alike. When we're raking leaves in the fall, some of it is put into the flower beds or the vegetable beds, and then cow manure, which you can buy at a local store such as Home Depot or Lowe's, or if you're lucky like me, the corner farm store, because we still have some farming stores that were in existence way back 100 years plus ago, and they're still functioning, and you can still get your supplies from them. One of the things I also do, I make sure that I get organic seeds. And what I'm suggesting for you to do, because the whole intent of this is to prepare you for doing gardening. And you may have to do container gardening because you may not have any land around your home. And maybe you won't be able to get permission to do gardening, but you can do container gardening. And as I move forward with this series, I will show you some of my containers that I have that I've purchased and never used because I have land. So I've been using the land, but I did buy some of these things like topsy-turvy. Is something that used to be advertised a lot on TV. And basically what it is that you put your tomato plants in them and you hang them upside down, and the tomato plants grow upside down, and it's called topsy-turvy. So that's an example of a container that you can use to garden if you like tomatoes like I do. Yeah, I left that out. Yeah, tomatoes definitely was one of my first crops. I love tomatoes. All right, so nutrition. I just described to you about how we put the leaves in and the black cow manure. Also, fish emulsion is something that we use. The white powder, it's called lime. Blood, there's a powder blood that you can buy. I won't go into a whole lot of details about the fertilization items that we purchase and put into the ground to make the soil more nutritious for the plants and therefore to us when we eat the plants. One of the things that I like to talk about a bit is the history of down south. I am a Southerner. I love the South. No matter what the terrible history has been, there are good things that have happened as well. And if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And I've always been part of the solution, trying to fix things down south. But one of the things when the settlers came, I don't think they knew how to do farming, or if they did, they didn't know how to do it properly. And they ended up destroying the soil. The topsoil was lost and all that. So eventually it was very difficult to make a living growing crops, vegetable crops, say. So they all of a sudden decided to do tobacco, which is one of the things that the Native Americans had. And so they started doing the tobacco farming because it could be done in this poor quality soil. So as part of being stewards of the earth, we also need to keep in mind that we need to make the soil better. So when we're raking leaves, we can put that back into the soil and fertilize the soil and build it back up. That's one of the processes to be prepared to do. If you don't have land around where you live, then, you know, that's a different story. You'll probably have to end up using the different types of containers that I'll show in a later episode in this series. Okay, so wellness, nutrition, high price of food. Let me give you another great example. When I was growing up in this area, I can remember when it was very rural, where you would see the farmers coming in with mules and a wagon to bring in their crops. I lived right up the street from the tobacco warehouses and, you know, a lot of other type of industry that was going on in my neighborhood. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that those years have gone by, but the same process of fertilizing and et cetera needs to be followed. So wellness, nutrition, the high cost of food. My cousins lived in the hood, but they had a nice big backyard, and they would run the rows of their garden in the same direction as their clotheslines, so that they would be able to hang the clothes, take the clothes down, because we didn't have dryers back then. And they would grow their food, you know, corn, butter beans, string beans, you know, whatever they were growing. They were growing some really good food, and they were not dependent upon the grocery store. They may have gone to the grocery store to get a few things, but for the most part, they ate out of the backyard, out of the garden in the backyard. And that is what I'm promoting here today. We don't know what's happening. There are people being rationed in other countries. You don't want to wait until that day comes. I want to give you another great example. There was a storm that came through. Oh, it's been over 30 years ago. And the storm came through. I heard the electricity go out. And the reason I say I heard, I was asleep. I heard the electricity go out because we had an electric clock at the time. And so I could tell that that clock was no longer working. I turned over and the electricity come back in. But little did I know it was going to take over a week, almost 2 weeks, for the electricity to come back in. But one of the things that I always made sure, well, we always made sure, my husband and I, was that we always had at least a half a tank of gas, hopefully a full tank. And we also made sure that we had money in the house. Not a whole lot of money to make people want to knock you upside the head and rob you. But we had, you know, enough money to get from one place to another in case of an emergency. And that's something that everybody should do. I know we're in the digital age, and people love Bitcoin. People love debit cards and credit cards, and they don't love coins, you know, pennies, nickels and dimes, that type of stuff. I remember Reverend Ike used to say it used to make him nervous to hear change. But you got to have some money in your possession at home, because guess what? The electricity went out, and that meant no debit cards could work. You couldn't go to the bank to get any money because they have everything set up digitally. I can remember when it didn't happen like that. You actually went in with your little passbook and you got your money out, and they would stamp your little book. That's how things were done manually. So if the power went out, they could put a kerosene lamp up or whatever, and people could come in and still do business. Now, modern conveniences such as using credit card and debit cards, they have taken that out of the equation. So you now have to be reliant on yourself. You have got to have some money in case of an emergency. So anyway, long story short, the storm came. It was for a week and a half or so. And we decided, hey, let's see how far we have to drive to find electricity. Took us 15 minutes. We drove past the people in our town, and they were standing in line at the grocery store. The grocery store was dark. Well, they were fortunate because, the grocery store wanted to make money. But guess what? They had to have money to buy the food or whatever they were trying to buy. You had to have cash. That's another lesson I want you to know, that you have got to have cash on hand. And you need to have small denominations so that if they say they don't have change, you're not stuck with just leaving the balance of your money with them. So make sure you have coins. Make sure you have singles. That's what we call $1 bills. And of course, larger denominations. But make sure you have those singles for sure. And of course, coins. So we drove about 15 minutes down the road, and everything was just like nothing ever happened. So therefore, if we had wanted to, we could have done some transactions with a debit card at the banks there, or gone to the bank during, regular hours. We were able to go to the grocery store, buy gas, and then we would ride back to our little dark city and go home. So I just want you to be prepared in case of something crazy happening. And God, please don't let it happen here in the United States. We're praying. But the prices are high. The prices are high. You can't deny that. And you just have to deal with the reality that you have the ability to be prepared. Why not be prepared? And if it doesn't happen, you're still blessed anyway. So let's talk about the gardening part if you've never done it before. I suggest for you to get Blum's catalog. Go online and see if you can find their website. B as in boy, Lums, Blum's Almanac. That's what it's called. I like that one better than the Farmer's Almanac because of the way they have it designed. But check it out. See what vegetables in your zone, because there are different zones where you might have to get hardy vegetables if you're in a really cold climate. And in my case, I'm in the South, and it's a pretty good climate right now. We don't know what might happen next, but right now I'm sticking with it's pretty good. And you need to get you some seeds, and there are some organic seed companies that you can order your seeds from. If you don't want to do that, you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's. I'm not getting paid to mention their names, but they're across the country, so I know you might be able to find one of those. Or to your local mom and pop farming store like I do. Also, just start getting ready, getting your tools ready. You can go online. We didn't have YouTube back in the day. So now you have YouTube. When you add the nutrition to the ground, as I've mentioned before, that we would put down the black cow manure, or you can use black chicken manure. They have all kinds of stuff in Home Depot that you'll be able to find, or Lowe's, and fish emulsion and things of that nature to enrich the soil. And you need to do that earlier than you do the planting, because that may burn. That's what we call it, burn the sort of like a chemical burn. Because you can buy some plants. You can use seeds, but you can use plants as well, tomato plants, things of that nature. So I just want you to get ready, get your mind right, to take care of yourself, to not be so reliant upon grocery stores, and to improve the nutrition of your food by being a gardener. And then also cut the cost of your food as well, because you won't have to be so reliant on the grocery store. If you can find a farm that has eggs, so you can get them at a better price, because this is what I do. Find that. It's always great to ride through the country and enjoy that. And there are, at least in my area, places where you can go buy meat. But the most important thing you need to know is the difference between good and bad. If you're trying to be well, whatever you eat has to be well too. So if you're still eating meat, if the animals are sick, you don't need to be eating those. And as I have told in another video, I started noticing something was different about the chicken that we actually would buy to cook at home compared to at restaurants. The chicken at the restaurants, such as the Whole Foods place where they have the rotisserie, the chickens were fine, but they were $12 a bird. So we were trying to, well, we can buy organic chicken and cook it and not, and save that for a special day to pay $12 for a rotisserie chicken. But I noticed that the chicken was really spongy before I found out about this bird flu. Now I said to my husband, I said, I think we're eating cadavers here, so we're going to stop eating chicken. So what we've done, we substituted the chicken with turkey. I'll talk about that later. So far, the turkey has been good. You have to know the difference between good and bad food, because if you're eating cadavers, that's not good for you. If you're going to eat meat, you need to eat the best that you can afford, and you cannot afford to eat cadavers. If it's feeling spongy around the wings and kind of fatty feeling, I was like, I've never had so many chicken wings that were so fatty. Could have been something else. So we don't do home cooked chicken anymore. We moved to turkey. And if we want chicken, one of my favorite fast food locations, yes, I still do some fast food from time to time, is Bojangles, because it's spicy. I love spicy food. And of course, Whole Foods has those $12 whole chickens that you can buy, and you can cut those up and make different recipes out of the whole bird, so your bird doesn't go bad if you forget to, eat it. So I think I've covered everything. Make sure that you start thinking about gardening and maybe even doing a few things to get your soil right so that your nutrition will improve with the food that you grow. And be careful of bad food. Don't eat cadavers. Find a source for your eggs that are natural. And I'll be back to give some more tips at another time. And thank you for watching. Now I'm getting ready to try to cut this off. I am blind, and so I have a difficult time finding some of these things. So if you see me struggling, it's because I can't see what I'm doing. Thank you for listening.